Good evening, witches, warlocks, sorcerers, adepts, friends, fans, family, and followers to the newest episode of Knights of the Nephilim podcast brought to you by Celestial Oddities Radio. I want to thank you for listening in tonight. If you are a return listener, you know what you're in store for. If you are new to the show, stick around and you'll find something that you love. We do bring you a show every other Thursday night from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, interviewing and talking with the best in the occult, whether it be ritual toolmakers, practitioners, theologians, you name it. We have them on the show. Find out about them and their practice, find out about who they are, and find out about their beliefs on different topics and subjects within the esoteric and the occult. Tonight we have Enoch Petrucelly on the line, and I'm very excited to jump in and pick his brain a little bit on what it is he does. But before we do that, make sure you click the like, share, and follow buttons on whatever platforms you are listening to us from iTunes to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, Castbox, Google Play, Amazon, you name it, we are on it. So feel free to listen where you feel most comfortable. But by clicking those buttons, what that does is it moves us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop as new episodes air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives, and there's something for absolutely everyone. This is Season 2, Episode 7, folks. We are very excited to be this deep into Season 2 right now, so if you have missed the past episodes, please feel free to jump back through them. You will hear a lot of great interviews, a lot of great guests on the show, and tonight will certainly be no different. So check them out. Let us know what you think. If you have suggestions for the shows, if you have things you want to see us do or do differently, don't hesitate to send us an email at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Again, that's celestialoddities@gmail.com. You can also message me on the Freighter Crow Facebook page or our Knights of the Nephilim Facebook page as well. I answer everyone daily, so you don't have to worry about, messaging us and never hearing back from us like a lot of different shows or a lot of different people out there. I'm very avid on getting back to you, and we always welcome your suggestions. Now, as I mentioned, we do air across a lot of different platforms. Our hosting company is Spreaker, and that's Spreaker. You can check them out through Spreaker.com or through the Spreaker app on the app market. That'll allow you not only to listen in on the show, it gives you an instant messenger feature that you can actually talk to us during the show in live time, ask questions of our guests, just interact with us, which we already have a few of you messaging us right now and seem very excited for tonight's episode, so thank you. If you haven't done that, I suggest to do so. We would love to hear what you have to say, and I would love to hear the questions that you have for Enoch tonight, and we're going to be jumping into that in just a moment. Enoch is a wonderful practitioner, someone I am very interested in speaking with tonight because he has powerful work. He has a very, very powerful presence and personality. But he doesn't come off as someone that you would normally think in the occult. He doesn't have this badass attitude or this edgelord strange feel to him. He is a very humble and very nice man, but a very strong and powerful man, not only magically but physically as well. Bodybuilder, very strong but very well spoken. And I'm very excited to jump into the interview with him tonight because he's a little bit different than a lot of our other guests. Not that there's anything wrong with any of them by any means, but he certainly brings his own presence to the arena of the occult, and I love that. So before we jump into him, let's thank our sponsors out there: Limitless Liberation, Goetic Impressions, Belladonna's Botanicals, Ars Gnosis, Arachne Arcane Services, and the Telemancer. Thank you guys for everything you do for the show, and we will take commercial breaks tonight throughout the episode to thank them individually, tell you a little bit more about who they are, where you can check out their work, and any promos or discounts that they got going on at this time. So without further ado, folks, as I said at the beginning, welcome to the show. I am Freighter Crow from the International Church of Lucifer, and I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Grab your ceremonial cloaks and daggers, your wands and your grimoires, light your candles, and step into the circle as we summon the spirit that is Enoch Petrucelly.
locked behind that door.
Horror. No normal mind can imagine something even more terrible than you.
Now my default friend. Like all quantities, horror has its ultimate. And I'm that.
There is a horror beyond yours. And it's in there. Locked behind that door.
All right, folks, welcome to tonight's show. We are very excited to have on the line with us Enoch Petrucelly. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing great. Good evening, Freighter Crow. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I'm glad our schedules, aligned with one another to be able to do this. As I mentioned, you bring a very certain presence with you, and I love it. Very strong man, like I said, both spiritually and physically, but very, very humble and quiet and reserved, and I love that. You don't feel that you need to give this larger-than-life presence when you speak or in your posts because your work speaks for itself, and that goes a lot further for me than someone who has to constantly remind everyone of their power.
Yeah, I appreciate that compliment. I do keep to myself for the most part. I'm not huge on social media or I don't do a whole lot on there, but I like, just staying busy and doing my true will, as they say. So.
No, and that's all you can do, and that's what resonated with me, and that's certainly why I wanted to bring you on the show. And if you've listened to the show before, or even if you are new to the show, we always, folks, jump into how our practitioners got started. So, Enoch, why don't you share with the listeners out there what started your path into the occult? Everyone is so individually different. I always love to hear, was it something that you were raised in? Was it something completely separate than that you found on your own? What is it that sparked your passion and path into the occult?
One word, survival.
Okay, absolutely.
For me, it started off with, I started off doing like yoga and meditation. I had no interest in doing ritual magic at all. And I was working, I had a Christian background. I was raised as a Baptist Christian. My parents were Christian. I went to Christian school, and so I really didn't deviate from the belief in God when I started doing yoga and meditation. And I kind of went with that idea and connected with the spirit of Yahweh or Jehovah and worked with that spirit for a while. And there was a point where I clashed with that particular spirit, and I didn't want to listen to what he was telling me to do. And, we just clashed really bad. He told me, that he was going to destroy my life basically if I didn't listen to him, and I still didn't listen to him. And some really bad things happened to me. I had that particular spirit put a very strong curse on me that destroyed my life when I was a young guy. I was 23, and I had a mental health crisis. I had a psychotic break. It was just a chain reaction of just terrible things happening to me, and I did terrible things to other people during that time because I became very mentally ill and very sick because of the things that were going on at that time. And there was a point where I found the left-hand path, and I came across a book called The Book of the Witch Moon by Michael W. Ford, and I started reading that particular book, and I had no experience or knowledge or understanding of the left-hand path, but the moment I opened that particular book, I felt the images in there and the words just speaking to me energetically, and I could feel the energy in the book. I could feel the spirits just jumping off the pages, and they would talk to me when I was laying down in bed after reading the book. And it was just a very surreal experience, and I was afraid of it at first. I didn't understand what was happening or if it was a good thing or a bad thing for me. And, slowly I opened up to left-hand path and left-hand path magic, and particularly Luciferianism at that time. and used that to better myself in terms of my mental health and putting the pieces of myself back together that I had lost when I had become mentally ill and psychotic. And, I've been practicing, probably been about a little over 10 years, perhaps, that I've been on the left-hand path and working with that particular system of magic. And it's been a good journey. I've gained so much from it. And it's not always about gaining stuff. It's about gaining, like I said, the pieces of yourselves that create the whole person and make you healthy, and connecting with what your purpose is in life and feeling like you have a purpose and feeling happy about what you're doing every day. That's huge. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it certainly does, and I think it's important. You've seen both sides. I think it's very important for someone to not from the start only be one thing. It's okay if that is the case. Some people were raised, even in the left-hand path, and that's all they've ever known, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but to see both sides of the spectrum, you really have a broader view of what each one holds and what the differences are, not only theoretically, not only psychologically, but also internally and physically and spiritually. And it really makes a difference having that basis. Is there's so many people on the right-hand path that condemn the left because they've never practiced it, they don't know anything of it. You have a lot of people who were raised left-hand path that automatically condemn God and condemn anything biblical, but they really don't have a full grasping of it. I can tell people right now that I've always been a very avid Satanist and Luciferian, but I would tell you that I think the Bible is a phenomenal book. I think that there's a lot of amazing allegories in it to teach someone spiritual growth. Doesn't mean that you have to buy into the dogma that they've turned it into and into the spiritual shackles that they've added to that. But if you go back to the base context, there's a lot of very deep and wonderful roots there. But you're right, left-hand path is about really self-growth, about finding that balance within yourself and bringing it together so that you can say, I'm happy with who I am. When you break that dogma of, I'm not living for a being above me and I worry at every move what I do, whether it's right or wrong, to that being, and you just start being true to yourself and happy with yourself, an amazing transformation takes place. And it's hard to explain to anybody who hasn't gone through that. I live a very good life and am good to people because I choose to be, not because I'm afraid of a sky god. And there's a big difference there.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, it's more authentic to be yourself and do what you want to do with your life and treat people how you want to treat them, not because some God outside of yourself tells you, oh, this is the right way to treat people. No, I treat people the way I treat them because I feel internally and intuitively this is who I am, and I treat people respectfully because I want to be treated respectfully,
Exactly.
So that makes sense to me.
No, and that's the best way to live it, and some people get lost along that as well. They go very left-hand path, and they go very dark and spooky with it, and they're like, I'm this evil sorcerer, and that's cool and all, but it's like you can be very dark in your workings. You can summon every demon that you want to. You can go into the deepest levels of yourself and into the caverns of the Klapothic trees. You can do all of these things and still be an absolute sweetheart of a person. And a lot of people forget that. They get so caught up in the lore and the spookiness and the robes and the Dungeons and Dragons that I make fun of all the time, and it's funny because I interview a lot of occultists and I'm very heavy in the scene, but I always speak my mind very openly that I laugh at the LARPer style magicians because I don't think that that's always needed. Sometimes, yes, sometimes wearing a robe, sometimes, having certain aesthetics around you does help with certain rituals. But when every photo ever taken of you has to be dark and spooky, you have to question, is this really just a gimmick or is this truthful for you? And I noticed that with you is you're just very much yourself, and just like myself, I love that. And there's a lot of people who are not that way.
Right, I hear you. And really, if you think about it, if you're diving into darkness in ritual, you actually end up being a better person in your dayside personality, and you end up being the opposite of dark in a lot of ways, because you're dealing with your darkness and your shadows and dealing with those things that most people don't deal with. They would suppress them, and by suppressing them, they would come out in ways that they didn't anticipate, and that would end up coming out in their daily lives, and they would end up being, in some ways, not a very good person because of that. So it's kind of interesting, how it's, if you look at it in that perspective of duality,
It really is, because you do become the opposite of what you surround yourself with as a practice. If you are always right-hand path in the light and love, that's great, but a lot of times it makes you miserable, and you end up becoming very dark internally to yourself and even to others around you. You surround yourself in darkness and very dark workings, and you normally become a much better person. And that's why it comes back to that fact I said earlier, that doing both of them will round you. And that's why, there's a big missing piece of it. You have people that study Kabbalism, which I do. I've always been very into the Kabbalah, and I love the thoughts and ideas behind it, but you have so many people that just focus on the Sephirah, and they want to climb that tree or work those spheres. That is great, and you will find a lot of growth there, but you will still be lacking heavily your overall working unless you're also willing to crawl down the other tree. Other people want to focus only going with the Klipothic tree, and they never focus on the Sephirah, and they don't obtain those sides of themselves. And yes, you find power, but a lot of people find ruin. You need to climb up the tree, I think, before you can climb down the tree. And when you do that, you find balance, and that's really what the trees symbolize to begin with is, Joachim and Boaz, the pillars. You are the middle pillar, and once you can find that balance between the two, you find complete equilibrium. You become less physical and more spiritual, and your spirit becomes more physical and less spiritual, and you match in between, and you transform and transmute into something altogether different.
Yes, and that reminds me of, the story of Lucifer, where he's ascended, he's a high angel, and he descends, so he has both, and that's a model that people should kind of keep in mind when they're doing left-hand path magic, that Lucifer has light and darkness. He's not all darkness, he's not all light. So,
and that's a very important thing that people miss, is they look at it too face value. Oh, Lucifer was a fallen angel. He must have been the devil. He must have been Satan. He was evil. God cast him out of heaven. No, as you said, it was to show that he was at the height of everything. He had the highness, but he also chose to go low. He went down because he had to work both angles and be both things, to be dualistic, to be able to be a concept that if you were smart enough and initiated, you could understand the meanings behind that. Every single thing that is in any of those books, whether it be the Bible, the Torah, the Talmud, the Zohar, it doesn't matter, the Quran, every one of these books, the Upanishads, any of them have similar stories that tell the same root and base thoughts and premises. But most people just focus on all of them as just being either a great or a horrible story. They don't see the underlying tones behind it.
Right, absolutely. It's a balance, it's the yin and the yang, it's the twin terminals, and it's like a battery, two terminals of a battery, and they play off each other, the positive and the negative. And that's how consciousness experiences itself. That's how Lucifer experiences himself, is to be the dark and the light. And by doing that, he can be one, and that's what it's all about.
Well, one thing a lot of people miss too, if we want to talk about, the imagery of even Jesus Christ, perfect example. The crucifixion of Jesus, most people just think as being this just insane story of this man's self-sacrifice to save humankind. But when you look at the scene of him on the hillside, on the cross, he is in the middle of two different people crucified as well, one being a good man and one being a horrible man, a thief, a villain. What does that symbolize? Both sides, mercy and severity of the tree. Below him there are two women crying at his feet, one being his mother, the innocent virgin, the pure, one being Mary Magdalene, who was known as being also, in some stories, a very powerful practitioner herself, it is said, and also some have called promiscuous. So when you look at that, you have both dualistic sides, once again, innocence and villainy, innocence in virtue and everything in between all together. And who is the center of all of it? Jesus Christ, the one who has arisen, the Savior, epitomizing that you are the Jesus Christ, and that if you can find that balance once again and self-sacrifice yourself, you will rise up to godhood and save mankind and save yourself. And these are things that most people, if you're listening out there, you're probably like, holy shit, I've never thought of that. These are the things that are hidden within all of the scriptures and the canons of all religions that teach you inner alchemy, and these are just the base roots of it all. But so many people just want to condemn one side. I am a devil worshiper, fuck Jesus, and all these other things. And it's like, yeah, I don't get it, man, because I am a devil worshiper and I have absolutely no problem with, Christian beliefs. I don't appreciate what the Vatican and the Church has done with the root elements of their religion, but I do still appreciate what it came from and what it stemmed into, as far as theoretically.
Right, I have to agree with you. I have no problem with Jesus in particular as the person he is, but as the person they created out of him, I have a problem with, the God that is outside of us that we absolutely have to listen to no matter what kind of mentality, or that you have to believe in him or you're going to hell for eternity. All that control and fear that they create with it is wrong, in my opinion,
They turned him into a vampire of sorts. As he psychologically has sunk his fangs into everyone who was raised in that dogma, and you can't escape it. His fangs are in you, his tentacles are around you, and he's constantly draining you because there's things you want to do in life that shouldn't be wrong. You feel that they're not wrong, but I've always been told they're wrong. So if I do that, I'm a horrible person. But why are? If you're giving yourself self-gratification of some sort, and you are not physically hurting another person, why is it wrong? Because you were told it is? And these are the things that they created from these stories, which almost makes the original God, the original spirit, have egregoric attributes to it, where that wasn't originally what I don't think it was meant to be, but now these things have been added by so many people praying and praising across the world over so many years that he has now taken on new form, whether he wanted to or not. And that is the power of our will and the power of our belief, that we can create egregores on our own, but when we attribute it to a archetype, you make him more and more powerful, whether for the good or for the bad.
Absolutely. All those people praying to Jesus or Allah or Yahweh, they're just giving them their power, and they're increasing its power over them. They're surrendering to that force outside of themselves. And it's, I think it's slowly changing and shifting in people's unconscious minds. I think the old systems are failing, slowly, but it's obviously not an overnight process. And although I don't believe in the right-hand path at all, I do believe in the concept of oneness and the concept of realizing that you need an enemy, to grow in order for you to grow more powerful, in order for a person to grow spiritually, mentally, and even in their own life. They need some kind of enemy to elevate them and put wind in their sails. It holds them back. It seemingly holds them back and slows them down, but at the same time, it's teaching them when they experience the enemy. It's a learning experience that elevates them, elevates their vibrational frequency if they know how to handle it and realize that the enemy is presented to them by their highest selves in a way.
No, that absolutely makes sense to me, and I think that that is what has been done through their workings, and I have to agree with you. I'm someone myself who doesn't follow or care to follow the right-hand path ethics and beliefs. I don't even sometimes call myself left-hand path, even though I am. I just kind of do my own thing, and it is what's right for me, but it is very left-hand path. But I hate to try to label it sometimes as left or right. It just is. And I think the difference, as you mentioned a couple minutes ago, is one is really self-sacrifice and the other is self-mastery. And that's sad, is to try to find salvation through casting yourself into the fire rather than adapting to the fire and growing with it. They're very similar in ways, but one I think is ultimately a better way of going. Is why suffer while you're here in the hopes that you'll reign after you're gone, rather than reign while you're here, and when you leave you should still continue to reign, because if you master yourself here, that just means you've mastered boot camp and you're ready for war. And people don't look at it like that. And I don't quite understand. It's been a heavy brain fog, I think, that they've been able to cast out across the masses. And as you said, slowly that foundation is crumbling. Now, as you said, it doesn't happen overnight, and it won't happen overnight. But if you look at attendance levels of traditional church ceremonies and masses now compared to 30 years ago, 50 years ago, there is a massive difference in numbers. There is a massive difference in people starting to accept, read, study, learn, and practice pagan-style religions or pagan-style beliefs and rituals, unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't openly talk about it, but paganism, I don't know, has ever been as big as it is at this very moment.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many people that love the old gods, that see them for who they are. And there's more than what there appears to be, because not everyone is open about it. Like you said, there's way more people into it than we think. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's a very good thing. And it's creating people that are more rounded and more, the whole world is elevating in consciousness, and that is very hard in a lot of ways, because if you don't, allow the higher frequencies to change you and adapt and grow with them, you suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to. There's always suffering and fighting and changing who you are, but it's worse if you fight it or don't put in the effort and accept that that's the process you're going through. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. Even with heavy workings, when you call upon a spirit, the problem is everyone wants to be king until they're handed the crown. And the same thing goes with rituals, as people, I want to see a spirit, and I want to summon old gods, and I want to call deities in front of me. And it sounds so amazing until they actually feel the current sweep into the room. And depending upon the force you're working with, is sometimes people can't handle that. As soon as they feel it, then they start to fight it. And you're not doing anybody any good, because not only are you not accepting and growing as you've started the process of wanting to do, you're now insulting that current because you were fighting the same thing you called into your house. That would be like inviting a friend over, and as soon as he goes to step into the doorway, you slam the door in his face. It doesn't get received well by anyone, and that's what people do. Is if you are going to try to want to grow personally, spiritually, then you have to take those steps that's needed to do so. And it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it's going to be painful or indifferent. Sometimes it's going to be scary or terrifying. But you have to accept it. And by just letting loose sometimes and letting down your guard and accepting it, you will change into what you were meant to be or what you'll soon be. And as you said, that's just sometimes letting go, allowing it to happen, not fighting it.
Exactly, and a big thing that people don't do when they do rituals of ascension or rituals of transformation, and their frequency goes up and their spirit is elevated, they access different parts of their unconscious mind by doing that. And when that happens, there's darkness in your unconscious mind that comes up, you know. And if you don't take the time in between rituals to ground yourself and do healing sessions with yourself, that can kind of like, you know, these spirits that it unleashes, that darkness that is in your unconscious mind will start to devour you, and you'll start feeling like you're, for me, it feels like my eyes will get dry, and I'll feel like intense anxiety, and I'll feel like just off until I lay down and do a healing session. You know, then it goes away, and I'm ready to do another ritual. I'm ready to move forward after I heal that darkness that is unleashed.
I think that's a very important step that a lot of people look past. People don't realize that there is proper etiquette to this work. You know, and depending upon your stance, no matter how you look at summoning spiritual, you know, alliances or currents, there is proper procedure. So we got people who want to follow the old school traditional Solomonic practices of using angelic names and binding. And if that's your thing, so be it. You have other people that say my best friends are demons and I don't do that because I don't want to respect them. Or don't want to disrespect them, rather. And,
right,
you know, that's fine too, whatever you choose. But either direction doesn't matter. There are still protocols that you have to follow. You should still, you know, go into the ritual proper. You should not just jump into it willy-nilly. You should spend time prior to it preparing yourself mentally and physically, preparing your altar and cleansing and being ready. I am big on the fact that I, for a week prior to a very large-scale ritual, will sleep with the sigil in my pillowcase. I will think about it at night as I fall asleep. I will think about it as I wake up. I will say the end of the spirit over and over again throughout the week under my breath as I'm doing casual everyday things. I will focus and meditate on it daily as I do my meditations. The day of the ritual, I will do consecrated salt baths, and I will consecrate my entire temple down. I sit and do a very lengthy meditation prior to even starting the ritual and charging the sigil and going forward. These are things that a lot of people skip because they say they're not needed, but what I can tell you folks is by giving it this much proper attention and alignment, you are grounded, you are focused, you are cleansed, and you are ready for the work. So when you do the work, you do it more efficiently and more focused. As I've talked time and time again, you can choose to drink tonight and drink a Miller Lite, or you can choose to drink tonight and drink moonshine. They're both going to eventually get you to the same place, but one's going to get you there and have a much more powerful result. Whenever I try to go into ritual, I look for that 100 proof. I look for that raw, packing a punch hit whenever I go into ritual. They both are going to get you a buzz, but how strong of one do you want? And the reason I use that as a metaphor is that people go into it, they don't do any grounding, they don't do any meditation, they just jump into it and they have some type of spiritual interaction, and that is great, and it's always still valid. But what they've gotten is a very watered-down trickle effect of the actual current itself. And they believe that they're now so powerful because they've had this current enter their life. And I'm like, you only experienced the mist that has come off of the river. You haven't actually dove in yet. And I think that that's important with preparation. As you said, you know, you have to ground. And a lot of people will not only not do that beforehand and go in properly, but they'll finish the summoning. You know, they'll go ahead and give the license to depart, and then they just go about their day like nothing ever happened. They don't take time to ground again, to do a meditation closing out the ritual and really get themselves back to where they need to be, to let the energies dissipate around them. They're like, you are free to return back from whence you have come. 5 seconds later, they're stepping out of the circle if they use one, and they're going back about their day. And the problem with that is energies sometimes linger. And even though you might consider them your best friend, folks, sometimes if you don't do the proper thing and you step right into that current, really fucked up things can happen to you, whether you think you're friends with the spirit or not. Your life can get turned upside down if you don't follow proper protocol. So ran over there, but I did want to, go over those things, folks, if you're listening, because I get questions daily, weekly from a lot of you through message asking about these things. And then I know a lot of you turn around and don't listen to what I have to say, and then things happen to you, and you wonder why. There are proper etiquettes.
Absolutely. I can't stress what you're saying enough. And, people do forget those things. Even I forget those things sometimes. And I pay the price too. We really have to stay sharp and, ask yourself, why do these spirits need us in the first place? And that is because they use us as a means to access the physical world in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And if you're not grounded, they can't really work through you, and your spells won't work that well if you're not energetically connected to the earth plane, So it's very important, even for your results.
I'm glad you said that. That is
the
true.
bridge.
Yep. Because that's another side of it, not only connection, but as you just said, if you were spell casting and doing anything of that nature, you're not going to have near as much of effect. So not only are you not getting as deep levels of that entity as you would like, you are not getting as deep of results as well, because once again, you haven't done it properly, and you nailed it on the head. Spirits need us because they can connect more with the physical plane, with bodies that they've never had, because they've only ever, in most cases, been spirit, unless you're working necromancy where they were once a living spirit. They need to connect to this plane. We want to connect to the spiritual world. By doing the right rites and rituals, you meet halfway and you become a little more like them and them a little bit more like you. And that's when the power happens. So if you're spell casting, let's use cursing, for example, and not that I'm encouraging going on just cursing people, needlessly. But if you are cursing someone, do you want to spiritually shoot them with a BB gun? Or do you want to drop a fucking pipe bomb on them? And there's a difference there. If you're going to go as far as to do something of that nature, you better make sure that it's just going to pack that punch and get the job done, rather than only partially get it done and then it come back on you or backlash. And that's why there is what they call the rule of return, where if you cast out, you'll have it come back to you threefold. Not necessarily. If you do it properly, you won't. But a lot of people just start sending fucking lightning bolts out without understanding electricity. And that's whenever they get burnt.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And especially if you're casting against another magician, which I do not recommend, you have to anticipate the fact that they will have a means of reflecting your spells back to you, So that's another thing about the law of three if you're casting against another magician.
Well, and that's been happening to me lately, folks. This is the first any of you have heard me speak about it, but I know someone has been playing games. And I actually had talked to someone for the very first time briefly earlier today. A friend of mine, through the internet waves had reached out to me and he says, for some reason, I just felt the need to check in on you and see how you were. And I really appreciated that. Everything's going well. There's been some things that have happened recently that's been unfortunate, but I do know and have felt for about a month now that someone has been trying to disrupt what it is I'm doing. Someone has been casting against me, which is a rare thing for me because I'm very kind and very loving to everybody. But unfortunately, folks, as you're doing bigger things, there are people that don't like that. And I've let it linger. I haven't stopped it yet. I've let it see what it, can do, so I can, follow it back to where it came from. But I'm letting all of you hear that there is someone or a group of people out there that are trying to play games. And once again, as Enoch said, you got to be careful with what you do and who you send it at, because sometimes they might be able to surprise you in ways you don't know. So cast away, little fuckers that are doing it out there. I can promise you soon you're going to see what I can do. And that's not something I speak about to many people, but I've felt it, I've sensed it, things have happened recently, all to show me that someone out there is trying to do their damnedest. And I got something for you coming. So, and I'm not afraid to say that. They usually say do it in silence. No, I don't need to be silent. It's coming. So just prepare yourselves. I'm sure some of them even listen to the show, so watch out. But no, that's the thing is you have to be careful when you do that, because if you don't do it properly, it will have the wrong effects. As I said, if let's use the pipe bomb, example. If you're making a pipe bomb and don't really know how to make one, that could be a problem, and there's a good chance you're going to blow your fucking arms off. So you need to study what you're doing. And that's the one thing I think people forget in this field. Now, before we jump in, folks, I want to, ask Enoch about his practice and some more questions involving him now that we've got a chance to really, go back and forth on some great content here. But before we do that, I want to jump into our first spotlight of our sponsors. So we'll be right back after these messages. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Goetic Impressions. Goetic Impressions is a company dedicated to the faithful creation of advanced ritual tools by following Grimoire guidelines as closely and as feasibly as they can in the modern world. Follow them on Instagram, Facebook, or their website, goeticimpressions.com, to stay informed on new projects and limited-time items that they roll out frequently. For listeners of Knights of the Nephilim podcast, you can use the promo code KOTN10 for 10% off of your overall order. Again, that is KOTN10 for 10% off of your overall order. And make sure you check out their Facebook, Instagram, and website. Once again, the website is www.goeticimpressions.com. Again, that is goeticimpressions.com for absolutely everything for your ritual needs. Fantastic items, quality items, greatly priced, quick shipping. Can't speak highly enough about these guys. Absolutely wonderful team, and I'm glad to have partnered with them. Thanks, guys. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Limitless Liberation. I'll read you about this wonderful company from their owner, Elena. Limitless Liberation was inspired by both Lucifer and Belial. Lucifer has been with me most of my life, as far back as I could remember. Belial and I started to work when I was going through a very difficult part of my life. He completely turned mine and my family's life around for the better in a very short period of time. In return, he asked me to create what he called Charger for him. He showed me the designs, so I created the first Charger for Belial, and Lucifer wanted one next. From there, I had spirits lining up with requests for magical items. Some are control freaks, while others just inspire. They are all so individually different, but every single item created has power within it. Each item operates on many levels. They operate as an anchor for the spirit you're working with, thus aiding easier connection between the two of you. They also operate like a power cell or battery, where they already come with an inherent energy to them, but they become stronger as you feed them and pull from them during ritual, as well as to strengthen your workings. Limitless Liberation continues to grow to honor the spirits that we love to work and build relationships with. You can check her shop out at etsy.com/shop/Limitless Liberation. Again, that is etsy.com/shop/Limitless Liberation. All right, guys, you've been with us for the last 45 minutes. We've been talking with Enoch Petrucelly about his practice, how he got into the occult, great, different occult topics and esoteric topics. So if you've missed anything so far, don't fret. You'll have about another 45 minutes with us to finish out the show. Once the show is done, you will have the capability of going back and listening from the very beginning. You can download it to your device for on the go. Whatever makes sense for you, you can do. But right now we're live, so you're going to be stuck with us from this point forward. And don't worry, you still got a lot of great content coming. We do want to also say thank you to Goetic Impressions and Limitless Liberations, which is the commercials you just heard. Wonderful sponsors, wonderful items. I recently did an unboxing video for Goetic Impressions on my YouTube, and I have one coming out in the next week or so on Limitless Liberation. She made me the most amazing altarpiece specifically for liquid liberation and blood offerings, and it's amazing and I love it. I'm looking at it right now as I'm saying it, so I can't wait to share that with you guys. It'll be coming out soon. So Enoch, I want to jump in now to first and foremost, was this something you planned as you got into the occult and started working these practices that you would become a writer, or did that just kind of come about through your practice? How did your writing start?
My writing started because, I had worked through quite a few grimoires and learned a lot about magic, and my spirit guide, had been with me for a few years at that time, and I was reading a book one day about the Qliphoth, about I think it was a vampiric grimoire about the Qliphoth, and my guide was like putting these words into my mind. He's like, "You can do this, Enoch. You can do this, Enoch." Like, oh, and then it dawned on me, hey, I could probably do this if I could probably write a book. I thought to myself, and I really had no experience writing, or I didn't even, not very good with grammar. I wasn't at the time. And it shows in my earlier books, they're not perfect. And, I just, as an experiment, wrote just a short book about sigils, and it's Enoch's Book of Sigils. And, I wanted to see if I could put together a little book, a little grimoire, and see, what would happen. And so I did. And it was a very rewarding experience. And I felt like I was giving back to people, and contributing to the community, if you will. And it felt good. So I did it, a couple more times, and, and I'm still doing it. I'm working on new books, currently, and, it's so enjoyable. And, it is my purpose for now in life. It is my true will to do the work that I'm doing, to break new ground and find new gnosis, not just go over the same gnosis that is available in books now, but to break new ground and find things that aren't available today, to remove at least some of the suppression of knowledge and put new information out there, even if it's considered unverified gnosis. It gets verified by people who use it and their experiences, and by my experiences and people who I know who have used it, so that's how it becomes grounded into this reality. It's by people using the gnosis that we receive. So,
well, that's important. Is you can put something out there and someone will say, well, what's your background on it? Where did you get this from? And you say, it's something that I experienced and learned directly from the spirits or deities. And they can say, well, there's no bearing in it. It's, it's bullshit. Well, where did everything come from? Where did the things that you're studying now, where did the Solomonic tradition come from? Where did, the Grimoire and Virum, and where did all these other books and things come from? They came from someone's studying of other people in some cases, and some of them came from personal gnosis that they've gathered and put out. It only seems so cemented in reality because it's been around for so long. But at one point in time, it's no different than your books are now. That could be something new to a practitioner. If it's around for 200 years, thousands of people have studied it, and it gets carried on as a lineage, then it's just as cemented in reality as anything else. So it's just all about the viewpoint that people take on, and some people are stubborn. But I think one thing that you had done, you've done several books now, but one book that you've done that I think is very new, very different, groundbreaking, and your own personal gnosis that other people have done and verified it as strong, is The Black Witch, a grimoire of the demonic tongue. And, if you are new to this, folks, this is a book talking about Enoch's learning of a demonic language. And in this work teaches you how to use this language, teaches you how to adapt this into your practice, and is very resonant and very different. So do you care to speak to us a little bit about how that transpired, as far as not only, writing this, but also learning this and gaining this from your guides?
I just kept a very open mind, throughout the writing of my books, and I set an intention to write a grimoire that was the most powerful grimoire that I as a person could write. I wanted to write the best work that I could do, and I had at that time been doing evocations of Lucifer, and he started giving me these. He started showing me the symbols that became the demon tongue letters, and I didn't know what they were at first. And it was actually after the evocation itself, when I was just sitting on my couch in my living room relaxing, Lucifer just like waltzed into my apartment and started showing me these symbols, and I didn't know what they were for. And then it dawned on me that they might be letters of some kind. So I started just writing them down one by one. And I asked Lucifer for meanings for the symbols, or a corresponding English letter for each symbol. And he gave them to me, and he gave me the numerical values of each of the symbols, and that became the demonic tongue alphabet, or the demonic tongue language.
That's amazing. I mean, it's almost, not only is it a language and symbolism, it's almost its own form of gematria as far as numeric values and equivalents, and how that can be used in its own formula to make sigils if one wanted to, by writing down the language almost as a planetary key and using that to draw sigils on. I mean, it's not just a one thing ends all. It can be used for multiple formulas from the root of the language itself.
Absolutely. It's like each letter is, if you will, similar to a rune. You know, it has divination meanings if you want to use them for divination. You know, you could dive into them deeper and discover new meanings for each of them. You could create sigils out of the letters, like you said, and you could use them to replace English letters. For example, in an N, a demonolatry N, replace all the letters with demon tongue letters, and then get rid of the vowels, or get rid of every fifth letter, or something like that, just to sigilize it and use it in that way. And it has absolutely, you know, if you do it right, it can have mind-blowing effects and really empower the sorcerer who uses them.
And I think that's important, because not only is it powerful in itself, but there's something to be said about stepping out of your comfort zone. If you're someone that uses N's all the time in regular plain English tongue, and you're very proficient at that, it's strong and it's powerful. But if you can learn to use a different language, a different, alphabetized system that you're not so familiar with, but you can get it to a point where you're reciting it properly and strongly, and you start using it, it does something about a reality shift. It changes your normal sense of mind to a different wavelength, a different frequency, which causes different results. And I think any type of true practitioner or magician should be happy in the fact of finding their own practice that works for them time and time again. That is strong. But when you find your own practice and you never deviate from your practice, I find that to be, tragic, because it's great to be amazing and step into the circle every time and know that you're going to have this exact result. But if you're not experimenting, what's the point? You should be breaching out beyond your comfort zone to find things beyond your comfort zone. Because if you only stay in your comfort zone, you've only grown as far as your comfort zone will allow you to grow. And one should never quit growing. If you reach a point where you're no longer growing, it's probably time to just call it a night and quit.
And the whole universe around you is growing with you. So if you stop growing, you're falling behind. And I mean, I don't want to say you're falling behind necessarily, but you become stale. You become stagnant if you're not growing with the universe around you. And when you do your magic, when a person does their magic and they're doing the same rituals over and over again, there's nothing wrong with doing the same rituals over and over again if they work. But there is something wrong with doing the same rituals over and over again and not trying to improve them and make them better and make them work better, I think. You should be always striving to work out the kinks and change little things here and there to create the most powerful magic that you can. Or someday maybe your spell won't work as good as it used to, because your spirit wants you to grow. And in order for you to grow, your magic might not work the same because they want you to grow. They want you to feel like you need to adapt all the time. it's kind of exhausting to think about it that way, but at the same time, it's so rewarding to feel like you are ascending, to feel like the old skin is shed. You're shedding that old skin and becoming better every day.
Well, that's it. Is every single time you perform that ritual, you should feel that you've grown from the time before that you've done it, not just because you're repeating it over and over again, but because you truly have grown. And with growth brings change. And when you grow, like I said, you as you said, you want to add new things to it and perfect it, because what you think might be 100% right now, I'm getting 100% connection. Well, as you really get good at it, maybe you'll say, you know what? No, I can go way beyond this. So my 100 was actually only 70. And that's what I was meaning earlier when I said is some people just jump in, do something very small and easy, and they get a little bit of a return from it, and they're always happy with just that. And if that's you, okay, you're a weekend warrior magician, and that's okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But at the same time, if that is the mentality you stick with, then don't gloat to others that you're something you're not, because for true practitioners and adepts, this is something that every time we are trying, experimenting with new things, doing new things, coming up with new ideas, just to see what it does. I have messed with light frequencies and sound vibrations. I have done strange off-the-wall symbolism and sigils that make no sense to the operation that I'm doing per se, but I'm wanting to see what type of return and result I get from it. Do I get nothing? Was it an absolute failure and I wasted 4 hours tonight? Maybe, and yes, it happens a lot. Sometimes just absolutely bizarre things happen that I can't explain, where, doors in my house just open and paranormal activity starts happening around me, and you're like, well, that's interesting. I don't know who that was. That brings me to a thought of a specific ritual I did. All of a sudden, the door to my temple flew open and I heard a woman say hello. And I wasn't working with a woman's spirit. And then all of a sudden the door slammed shut behind me and there was no one here except for my wife, and she was in the bedroom reading. So it was, there's interesting things that happen. And that night I was experimenting. I was doing some off-the-wall workings to see what kind of result I would get. And I got a strange result. Sometimes you have to do that because maybe then there could be a connection made with who that is. Why did she show up? What did she have to do with the deity that I was working with? What is her place in it all? Was it random or was there meaning? And when you start doing that, you peel back layers like an onion and you get to that core.
Yeah, absolutely. As Kenneth Grant would say, finding those tangential tantrums, finding the tangents and experimenting to do that and following your intuition, the very subtle feelings that you get, or very subtle hints that your daemon or whatever your spirit guide, whoever you work with, gives you. They won't say it out loud. They won't make it obvious, but it's there, that little unspoken voice that's always there when you are trying, you're trying to improve, and you're wholeheartedly trying to be a better magician. If you have a close spirit guide or you're close to your daemon, the things that they're not saying is what you need to listen for when you're trying to improve.
And that's important. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that every time a spirit interacts with you, that you have to hear them as a separate voice, that you have to physically see them, which is not the case. Sometimes the best advice and the best growth that a spirit that you work with frequently can offer you is your own voice in a time that you would have never thought of that. And what do I mean by that, folks? When you're doing something and all of a sudden a thought pop into your head and say, don't go that way, go the other way. And you're like, why? But then you do it, and then you find out that if you would have went the other way, something would have happened, and a horrible accident would have happened, or whatever have you, and you say, well, what the hell was that? It almost seems like it was your own intuition, but was it? Because sometimes you think about it and say, well, I would have never told myself to go that way. I've worked here for 10 years and never walked home that way, or whatever it is. And I use that just as an example. But sometimes it is your own voice being used by the spirit casting out something for you to grip a hold of. And a lot of times people ignore that as just a secondary voice in their own head. Oh, it's just some weird thoughts of mine. Sometimes the best gnosis seems like it's coming from you, but is it? And that's where a lot of people mistake that. And they say, well, I keep working and I don't seem to have a spirit come down and speak to me as in a separate voice. And I'm like, but do you have thoughts that pop into your head that are not normal? Do you have all of a sudden an understanding of something you didn't understand before? And people say, yes. I'm like, well, then there you go. You're very much connected with what you're working with. They just don't seem to know the signs that they're looking for.
And often, when you're doing a ritual and you have a specific intention to make contact, you might not make contact consciously during the ritual, especially if you're a beginner, and what happens a lot of times is after the ritual, when they go to bed, when they're least expecting it, that's when contact happens. And they may not realize what it is. They might think, oh, I just had this weird dream, I just had this weird experience with voices, but it was nothing. They might dismiss it, but don't dismiss it. If you get a weird numerical code, if you get a name that's random, but you don't know where it's coming from, write it down just in case. Have a notepad and pen near your bed where you sleep and be ready to write down information that comes through. If you open the gate and build the bridge, open the window on your end that allows the spirits to come through and talk to you, even if you're not in ritual, even if you're laying in bed, relaxing or sleeping. They'll come through and they will give you the messages that you need,
And sometimes you, as you said, will figure out what it means and it'll mean something profound. Sometimes you look at it and you're like, what in the hell does that mean? So, for example, I do that often, write down notes. I'm just looking at one right now. As you were saying it, I pulled it up on my notes on my phone. I woke up in the middle of the night. This was like probably a year and a half ago. And over and over again to myself, I just kept repeating, Duenet Nardvano Makila. I have no fucking clue what it means. I've looked it up multiple times. It's not a real language. So as Enoch can, say first and foremost, he has come down with this language that was given to him from higher sources. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was my own ramblings in my own head, but it was after ritual. I went to bed and woke up in the middle of the night over and over again, trying to fall back asleep. And all I kept saying to myself was, Duenet Nardavano Makila, over and over and over again. And I sat up and I'm like, I need to write that down. And I did. And I've never been able to find a meaning for it. But it's one of those things, folks, that maybe you light the candles, you step into the circle, you sit there and you repeat it over and over and over again. Most people would just cast it off as meaning nothing and let it go. But what happens if you do that? You light the candle and then a spirit that you've never seen or heard of before shows up in front of you. And it's someone who's been around trying to gather your attention, and finally he has it. And then you learn a whole new set of things that you've never known before because you just happen to pay a little bit more attention to what seemed like a random thought than you normally would. So that's something, folks, if you're listening out there, please follow through with, because I've certainly done so, and I've had wild results, because once again, that's experimenting, and it's paying a little bit more attention to those subtle things that seem like your own random thoughts that certainly are not.
That's an absolutely perfect example. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and people miss the obvious things, when they're doing magic. A lot of people miss them. But you just have to always be ready to receive gnosis, and you will receive it. And, another point that I would like to bring up is that you really need to, an individual magician or witch really needs to create a strong relationship with a specific guide, or with their daemon, or with a specific demon that they feel like they can fully trust. And when they do that, that's when real growth can happen. If they fully trust this demon, or if they create a relationship of trust with an entity that they know isn't going to trick them, at least not in a malicious way. They might trick them to help them grow, but not trick them to harm them. It really makes a huge difference in your practice, because you can go to that demon and ask them questions. Like, for example, that chant you received while you were sleeping, you could ask a guide, a daemon, or demon that you really trust, what does this mean? And if you have developed your clairaudient ability, you will get an answer. They'll give you a clear answer. If you build a strong enough bridge with a specific entity, if you build that relationship and put in the time to do it.
And that's important. I'm glad you said that, because it actually leads off of the reason that I said what I said with that, was that I was given instruction that if I use that in a ritual of its own, not calling upon any other spirit, but just use that as the N itself, and repeated it over and over again and really got into trance state, that I would find out its meaning. And by doing so, I certainly did. It's a personal thing that I would certainly like to keep to myself, but folks, it was something I could have never expected, and it was something that I've never seen written or talked about anywhere else ever. It's just something that I experienced as personal gnosis, and that's really it. And Enoch nailed that. Is the problem with it is once again, like I said, people want to become king until they're handed the crown, and I love using that as an example because it speaks volumes in a lot of ways. People want to do magic, but they want to feel like they're more powerful because they've talked to 100 spirits partially than speaking to 10 fully. And I don't understand that I will be the first to tell you I've worked with a lot of spirits over the years, but I mainly work with about 8 spirits total. I will step out of the box from time to time and work with others as needed for certain things. But my main pantheon that I work with is literally around 7 to 8 spirits in total. And honestly, even some of those 7 or 8 don't get called that frequently, but more than other randoms. I don't care to be the person that says, I've summoned hundreds of demons. That's great. What the fuck have you learned from them? Because you're not spending enough time with any one of them particular to really grow with that spirit. You've just mastered the art of doing nothing but wasting time and summoning a bunch of spirits partially. So as Enoch said, find that one spirit that you connect with. And at first, maybe you do have to summon and work or evoke or invoke a lot of different currents till you find that one that just feels like home. And once you build up that trust and you decide that that is going to be your guardian daemon that you can work with day in and day out, devote an altar to, devote your practice to, and work with fluidly, then you will notice a tremendous change and growth in your personal practice and gnosis and knowledge. But you can only really do that by finding that spirit, by searching a little bit and then sticking with what feels comfortable. Please don't be the person that tells me you've summoned 78 demons or 250 demons in the last year, because first off, I'm probably going to think you're full of shit. And second off, I'm going to realize you probably haven't learned anything, anything substantial. And that's only my view. I'm not speaking for Enoch, but that's how I feel on it, because I meet so many people that are like, I've summoned 17 demons last month. And I'm like, good fucking for you, bud. I did 2, and I'm cool with that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Enoch, but I know that a lot of people seem to think that the number of spirits that they talk to somehow overshadows the depth of the workings of the spirits that they should be working with.
No, I completely agree with you regarding that. And you have to build the foundation. You have to build a strong foundation with those who you trust the most. And then it's okay to branch out and connect with other demons, other spirits, other entities that the particular spirit that you're close to gives you the idea that you can trust them or not when it comes to the particular task that you're doing or whether they'll help you or not,
Well, and I know I can say first and foremost, sometimes you'll meet those ones that are you're connected with. Sometimes you meet ones that are absolutely connected, and that you're thinking like, is this my guardian spirit? And then there's other times that you will connect or not connect, I should say, with a spirit at all and have strange, indifferent, or horrible experiences. I think of one specifically that I called upon, and it was terrifying. I don't know. We didn't connect. We didn't do well with one another. I don't think that we were against one another in any way. I just don't think for some reason we're meant to have dealings with one another. And it became a situation where it was suffocating within the temple space. I was having a hard time breathing. I felt like it was pulling the air out of me, which I've felt in other cases, but not like this. And it was just like for a couple minutes I was in pure misery of the power of this thing, and it just seemed infuriated that I even tried to speak with him. And that's something that I've experienced different degrees of over the years, but there's only one time that truly was just a absolute no. Like afterwards I'm like, well, I fucked up there and I'm never doing that again. And sometimes you have to live and learn, and that's an important lesson as well. And that's another reason why I don't feel the need that you need to call hundreds of different currents, because if you find those ones that really work well with you, then you're going to learn a lot from them just as much as you would calling upon many. And you can probably save yourself that type of situation of just willy-nilly jumping into all kinds of relationships, and having that experience. Because sometimes it's not, not fun by any means.
Right, absolutely. It's all, you can't just, for example, you don't want to do possession with the spirit that you just met. You don't want to do possession, or full possession, I should say, with a spirit that you don't know, unless you, like I said, have a guide who says that they agree to do it with you. They agree to help you. If you have that safety net of a spirit guide or daemon, it just makes all the difference, so.
Now, we have a couple comments came in here. Earlier I had some people saying hello and let's go and absolutely, looking forward to this episode, so I didn't get a chance to highlight those. But we have some people saying, I have no questions right now, but absolutely love the shared knowledge. This has been one of my favorite episodes. Thanks, Enoch, for sharing your journey. And then I have another comment that just came in and says, I agree with Lynn. I've been just kicking back and enjoying the show. So thank you guys for listening in, and anybody else out there that wants to chime in on the instant message feature, you can do that through Spreaker.com or the Spreaker app. We've certainly enjoyed talking with one another so far and have a little bit of time left of this episode. But these are just things to consider, and I don't always do this with my episodes. Sometimes we talk strictly upon the person's practice or their books. Enoch was someone I knew going into this that we could have a very educated and comfortable, laid-back conversation with one another. I gear how my episodes will go depending upon the vibe that I get from the practitioner I have on the show. So if you're enjoying tonight's show and saying, wow, they're really having some great conversations and some good, summoning 101 lessons here, that is why, because this is the type of guest and the type of knowledge that I know he has that we can have that. Sometimes I deviate from the deeper conversations and just stick with that person's practice. And tonight I wanted to do something a little different, so I'm glad you guys are enjoying that. So before we jump in any further, I do want to jump into a couple more highlights of our sponsors here, so we will be right back after this sponsor. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, the Telemancer. Let me first tell you a little bit about their owner, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about them. James Hunter Ralston has been a member of the Order of the Voltec, starting in 2008 and progressing through several degrees, last serving as head of the Outer Order. The Order of the Voltec is an offshoot of a pylon of the Temple of Set, originated to study and practice several forms of the sorceress methods centering on techniques used by Mexican and other Central American priests and magicians. Many of the techniques involved were popularized in the late 1970s and 80s by Carlos Castaneda. Over the decades since his first experience with magic, his desire has grown into the creation and use of what other shamanic sorcerers term as power objects, talismans, amulets, totems, and other powerful objects. His interests expanded to the degree that he chose to become an apprentice of several Appalachia's premier craftspeople and learn the art of metalcraft to produce power objects for both himself and select patrons. He does work with gold, pewter, silver, and sometimes other metals as well. He has been doing this for over 8 years. He does create talismans, pendants, rings, altarpieces, and more, almost all exclusively by custom commission. And you can check out his stunning work at facebook.com/thetelemancer1. Again, that is facebook.com/thetelemancer1. all as one word. Thank you so much. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Arachne Arcane Services. Arachne Arcane Services is a husband and wife duo comprised of Baron and Baronessa Arachne. With over 40 years of practical experience, they are masters of the occult arts through various practices and paradigms, such as necromancy, high magic, black witchcraft, and more. They are published authors under their own publishing house, the Arcane Press. They offer books, courses, spell work, consultations, ritual tools, and more. All of their products are handmade of the highest quality material and empowered through ancient rites. If you wish to know more about them or their business, or you require their services, please feel free to contact them at arachnearcaneservices.com. That is Arachne, ARAIGNEE, arcaneservices.com. And if you use promo code KOTN, you will get 10% off of your overall order or purchase as a special highlight of them being a sponsor of this show. Thank you so much, guys. Knights of the Nephilim podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Belladonna's Botanicals. Belladonna's Botanicals is owned by Jennifer Vatsa, a left-hand path and poison path witch, certified aromatherapist, herbalist, perfumer, skincare formulator, and incense crafter who designs and has created a massive product line consisting of over 300 products, with new ones being released every month. Belladonna's Botanicals provides high-quality, handcrafted metaphysical and self-care products, including flying ointments and oils, herbal tinctures and elixirs, herbal smoke blends, ritual oils, powders, incense, radionically charged crystals, ritual bath products, fragrances, and bath and body products. Jennifer draws inspiration from the spirits she works with, and they often have requests. Anecdotally adding that as she was creating her product lines for the dark goddesses and demonic gatekeepers, that King Paimon showed up requesting his own product line as well. She often directly channels what they would like to be included in their products, in addition to her own ritual workings along with known correspondences. She also has a popular left-hand path-oriented YouTube channel where she posts content on everything from podcasts with other occultists to her gnosis from working with different spirits and various topics pertaining to her craft and creations. You can check out her product line at www.belladonnasbotanicals.com. Again, that is belladonnasbotanicals.com. Or check out her videos on YouTube by searching her name, Jennifer Vatsa. That is Vatza. Thanks, Jen. All right, guys, we are back on Knights of the Nephilim podcast. We have Enoch Petrucelly that we've been speaking with, talking with, and having great conversation with for the last hour and 17 minutes. Have a little bit of time left before we wrap up this evening. Before we do, I want to make sure that you guys are aware that there will be some changes coming up with the shows. I'm going to be moving the time back starting in November on my actually all my shows, I should say. So not only Knights of the Nephilim, but also Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys podcast. And when the new season of Uncovering the Underground comes out in the beginning of 2022, I will also be moving that back. They will all still be Thursday nights, as right now we stagger Celestial Oddities and Knights of the Nephilim back and forth every other week. Uncovering the Underground will just be its own thing every week, Thursday nights, for a couple months, and then as it ends, the new seasons of these shows will return. But the reason I'm bringing this up is we are now going to be starting, and I haven't officially locked it in either 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So be keeping an eye on the radio show pages and watching out for that. We will have a couple episodes left in October before we make the time switch. It's just going to be easier for things going on here. I have 2 kids, and with work and things, I'm always like, fucking flying to be here in time. I'm jumping down 4 minutes before the show comes on and we're kicking in. Just think it'd be a little bit easier. So hopefully you guys understand that and would be okay with an 8:30 or 9 o'clock start. If it was 8:30, it would be 8:30 to 10. If it's 9 o'clock, it'd be 9 to 10:30. I'm going to try to stick to 8:30 to 10. We shall see. I have to iron some details out. But I want to make sure I threw that out there to you guys, so in a couple weeks, as we flip over into November, someone doesn't jump on at 8 and say, where the hell are these guys? So there are some changes coming up, one to make you guys aware of. We have some other comments coming in right now. I'm listening now and will be listening again on Spotify later. Now, that's what I like to hear, guys. Listen to this shit 20 times. Absorb it. Go play it for your grandparents. Go play it for your neighbors. Knock on their door. Make them listen. I want people to hear this shit, gain the knowledge and gnosis that they need to. So thank you guys all so much for your support. As I said, if you tell one friend every week of the year, that's 52 new people from each of you that'll find us each year. And with all of you doing that, that's thousands and thousands of people a year. So, small things go big, long ways. So please do so. So, Enoch, why don't you tell us, obviously your first book was the book on sigils, which you can find right now, folks, on Amazon, I think for only the price of $7. So you have it priced very, very well. What was your second book? I know you have about 4 or 5 books out, I think, right now that are purchasable on there, but what was the following book after the Book of Sigils?
It was another book similar to Enoch's Book of Sigils, but it deals with the Neteru, or the Egyptian gods and goddesses in particular, and their symbols or sigils that I channeled, and the meanings of those. And that particular book has also some words of power in it that people can use. It's called the Grimoire of the Neteru, and it's also priced at a low price, $13. And after that one, there was the Book of Soul Retrieval, which is basically a book that I wrote for people who are kind of just getting into magic and they need to know some certain things, be aware of certain things before they, start getting too much into it. They need to know like how to ground, how to manage their energies, and how to shield themselves, basic stuff, and how to ward off enemies in the astral planes from feeding on them once they become more, once their vibration increases and they become more powerful. It helps to know certain things like that. So, and that's the Book of Soul Retrieval.
Well, that is very important, because I think a lot of people don't understand that as you start to really dabble and then move from dabbler to practitioner and so forth, you emit frequencies, or we'll call it light, in a dark cavern, let's call it. And now a lot of things that have been in that dark cavern for a long time see this glowing light. And just like a moth to flames, they come to it and say, what is that light that I'm seeing? It's interesting and I want to go to it. And a lot of the things coming to you aren't necessarily malevolent, but they don't always have your best nature in mind. Just because something doesn't agree with what you think is best for you doesn't necessarily make them a malevolent being, but it means their nature might be contradictory to your own. And if you don't use groundings, if you don't use tactics, especially in any type of astral projection or any type of opening of doorways, even self-possession, you can really be in for a surprise if you don't know the proper tactics, because what you think you're letting in could altogether be something different than what you let in. And that can be very detrimental to you. I speak from experience, folks. So make sure you have your guard up, not so much that you're not allowing the currents to work with you properly, but enough that you're making sure stragglers don't hop the fence and attack. Now, after that would have been the book I think we talked about earlier, which was The Black Witch, a Grimoire of the Demonic Tongue. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. That's my best book, I think, in that it describes my story and the things that I went through and why magic is important for me, and why it's important to, or why it would be important to other people to use in order to improve themselves, not just get things, like I said before, but to connect with their daemons and their true will and find their purpose in life. And that book kind of focuses on that. It has a ritual in it called the Rite of Attainment. And that particular ritual puts the sorcerer, witch, or magician in contact with their daemon.
And there's no describing that. There's no describing when you make such a connection that you know that is your main spirit guide. And it takes some people a very long time to discover that. It Other people find it quickly. Some people never find it at all. But if you are fortunate enough to do so, as we mentioned earlier, it will change everything in your working. So listen to the man, buy his books, follow his workings, and find out who that spirit is or what that spirit is for you, and you will notice an immense amount of growth. And that can't be weighed. There's no price you can put on that. There's no weight you can put on that. That once it happens and you look back and say, wow, 6 months ago I was a different man than I am now, or last year I was. I can tell you folks personally myself, if I rewind back 3 years ago to now, and I can do that every 3 years if you wanted to, but if I go 3 years back from then till now, who I was to who I am now, it's insane. I mean, you would stick the two people side by side, and not that I was ever, a bad person, but the amount of self-growth in multiple areas. Think of every area of your life right now and how good you are in it. And imagine if you were 5 steps better in every one of those categories. Now fast forward again, and if you're 5 steps even further. And it's a never-ending chain, and that's what you can do through the left-hand path, and that's what you can do by working with these currents and these spirits. If you take away the dogma, if you go into thinking you're walking into the lion's den and you'll be ripped apart, then that is exactly what you will get. But if you go in with truth and honesty and dignity, you will receive those things back tenfold, and it'll change everything. And you will find the steps to do so in these workings of his books, especially the Demonic Tongue book, which I believe, is just a great work that people should study and look into, not only for its power, but for the fact that it is so incredibly different than anything else out there right now.
Thank you for your kind words. I really, I appreciate being on, and I really appreciate you having me on your show. Is there any other questions you can think of that you would like to ask me?
Last two, and then we're going to wrap it up, brother. I always ask, or most of the time I should say I ask, if you had all the time back, every single minute, every hour, every day that you've spent reading, researching, writing, meditation, rites and rituals, all of it back right now, to put it all towards one other area of your life or one other focus or passion, what would it be?
That's a hard question.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't change. Let me just preface it by saying I wouldn't change what I have done already in terms of all the time that I've put in has been worth it. And definitely worth doing for me. The research, the rituals, all worth doing. And the only thing I would do differently, if I could do something else, is probably art in particular. Bodybuilding I do already. I don't compete, but I do like sketching. I do like painting. Digital art is awesome too. And, the arts in general, playing guitar, singing, things like that.
No, them are all great passions, so nothing wrong with any of those. And then I'll finish up with the last question here. If you had to give words of advice to someone right now, say this is, the very, very beginning of their journey. They happen to find the show tonight. They tuned in. They don't know much about me or you. They don't know much about magic or anything involved with it. And they're just having, starry eyes right now of looking to what could be in the future, but they're not sure how to get started. What is the vital piece of information that you would give them right now as far as guidance, if you could?
The first rituals that you should learn to do, in my opinion, are protection magic, shielding yourself, having an idea of how to curse if you have to. And lastly, the first spell that you should do on yourself is to make yourself smarter and more intelligent. It's the most important thing that I could say to somebody who's just starting out on left-hand path, because, you're going to need it. You're going to need it because these demons and these entities will test you over and over again. And you need to be smart. You need to be on your toes, or, you end up with a bloody lip. You fail. You probably won't fail miserably and it won't be over for you, but it's better if you can learn in a quick way and avoid the pitfalls that are on the path. Keep yourself humble and always be open to learning new things, and always trust yourself.
Great words of advice, folks. If you heard that, make sure you follow them because you can't go wrong with any one of those pieces there. Enoch, we do want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and sharing with us your wisdom, your passion, and your words. Certainly your work and your practice as well. Folks, if you're listening out there and you have missed any of the show, make sure you go back and listen to it from the beginning. Hell, if you have heard it, listen to it again, as we said. If you have any ideas of what you want to see with the show, as I said, see differently with the show, anybody you want to see on the show, drop us a line at celestialoddities@gmail.com, or you can message us at Freighter Crow or Knights of the Nephilim Facebook page. Make sure you check out all of our past episodes, and make sure you tune into our show 2 weeks from now, October 28th, our Halloween edition. We have Alistair Knock, the Satanic Minister for the Magnum Opus Satanic Coven in Florida. He has also released several great works on satanic magic and rites. Someone who, I've read pretty much most of his books at this point. I think there's maybe one or two that I have not. He has about 8 out right now. And love his work, so make sure you tune into that episode as well. Once again, that'll be the 28th. And on all the weeks in between our shows here at Knights of the Nephilim, make sure you check out Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys for the best in paranormal and supernatural metaphysical talk. Other than that, we want to thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow button. And one last time, Enoch, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Hey, not a problem. I was so glad to, be part of the show. Thank you, Frederick Rowe.
Oh, not a problem. You have a wonderful evening, and we'll certainly be bringing you back sometime in the near future.
All right, sounds good.
All right, guys, we'll catch you next time on Knights of the Nephilim.